people can see this screen, because, yeah. If not, I will try to explain. There's a really hilarious joke on here. If you play Night in the Woods, it's a Night in the Woods reference. Our mothers told us not to talk to you, so it's very relevant to furries, I think. So a couple of things real quick. I give this talk pretty much every year here and at other conventions. How many of you have seen me give a talk like this before? How many of you have never seen me give a talk like this before? Oh wow, good mix. How many of you is this your first Furry Fiesta? Damn, I mean, darn. How many of you is this your first Furry Con ever? How many of you have no idea who I am? Why would you come to a talk when you don't know? All right. Well, I appreciate it. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, so one of the first things, the important thing to get out of the way, the subtitle for the talk. I always have a really clever subtitle for this talk. I struggled this year not to come up with a subtitle, but to narrow it down. So I'm just going to hit you with all of them. Right? So we have furry psychology, putting the cat in catharsis. That's okay. We have schizophrenia, more like shih tzu-phrenia, am I right? I was expecting laughter on that one. Okay. Behavior or behavior. I'm losing them. Psychometrics, more like psychopetrics. We all extroverts here? All right, so a bunch of perceptive individuals. All right, I'm definitely losing them now. All right, this, by the way, is how I expected this to go. And it's at this point that I remind you that this was paid for by the Canadian government, so. You're welcome. Okay, or I'm sorry. So I guess I ought to introduce myself. So that's me. I'm Dr. Courtney Plante. I also go by Nuka, if you haven't noticed. So in addition to being a psychologist, a legitimate psychologist, I was a furry first. So this is me establishing my furry credentials. To establish my psychology credentials, I do have a PhD in social psychology. Believe it or not, I am a legitimate doctor. I study, among other things, I study, right here, video games. I'm one of the folks who's ruining violent video games for everyone. Not really. In addition to that, I study fantasy. So I study why people engage in fantasy. That's really clever. Is this real life or fantasy? Yeah, all right. And yes, in addition to doing those lovely pieces of research, I also study this wonderful fandom known as the Furry Fandom. I don't do it alone. The narcissist in me wants to take total credit, but in actuality, I work alongside these fine folks. So Dr. Elizabeth Fine, Dr. Kathleen Gervasi, Dr. Stephen Rayson, who's out there manning the table while I'm being lazy in here, and Dr. Sharon Roberts. So all of us work on this thing called FurScience. We run and maintain a website. I'll pimp that out later. The important thing to notice that when I talk about the data today, we're talking about legitimate science here. So this isn't rumor, this isn't speculation, this isn't opinion. We legitimately study furries the way psychologists would. So we're talking about the culmination of more than 10 years of research. We've been studying thousands of furries, more than 25,000 furries over the past 10 years, from more than 70 different countries. So 6 different continents, no Antarctica furries yet. We're waiting for a penguin. And yes, so I don't want to hear anyone complaining that, oh, but you know, I have this one friend, our sample sizes are bigger than yours, period. So we try to make this data available, not just to furries at talks like this, but also to the media, who often come around asking us questions about furries, to parents of furries who want to know more about what their kid is getting into, and so people can win internet arguments. That's mostly what we do. So if you go to our website, FurScience.com, or add us on Twitter, at FurScience. We have a YouTube channel, FurScience. We're kind of everywhere, so go add us. You can do that right now if you'd like. Yes, and we have a book. So you can go to FurScience.com and download our book and get the book version of this. But then you wouldn't have my charming personality. All right, let's get to the science. Yeah. right. By the way, you'll see these two running around. That's Nuka and Kaylee. Nuka is me, and Kaylee is my little research assistant. We wanted mascots, so there they are. So the plan of action today is to talk about what we call fanship. What is it that furries are fans of? Let's make sense a little bit about what makes furries furries. And then talk about this thing called fandom, the furry culture, the furry community. What makes that such an interesting place to psychologists? We'll help dispel some common misperceptions about the furry fandom. And then at the end, I'll wrap up with some Q&A. With that in mind, the talk itself is about an hour and a half, and this is a 2-hour chunk. So there is plenty of time for questions. So to that end, I'm going to ask, if possible, hold off on questions till the end to make sure we make it to the end and we don't derail halfway through the talk. Can we agree to that? Yeah. Great. I'm glad we think this is a democracy.